Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Game with Hal. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a special guest, one who's covered wrestling, fighting, the MMA, and the UFC. His name, Ariel Helwani. You wouldn't want to miss this insightful conversation with Ariel Helwani on Beyond the Game with Hal. How did you know your goal was? How did you get into media? Did you know that your goal was to cover the MMA? And what were some steps you took to get there?
Well, I was always a huge combat sports fan. I was a huge fan of journalism. I always used to look up to journalists. I would look up to broadcasters. I would idolize them. I would try to emulate them. And I got to Syracuse University in 2001, and for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who all had the same dream as me. They all wanted to be the next broadcaster in baseball, basketball, football, etc. And and then all of a sudden, here's this sport called MMA and this league called the UFC. And all of a sudden, here's this situation where I look around and there aren't a lot of people covering it. And I'm saying, I love this. I love combat sports. I love boxing. I love wrestling. I love all these things. And I love the UFC. Like, everyone's going down this path. Let me go down this path. And so I started my own show there and started reaching out to fighters. And that's really where it all began, 2001.
And then another thing with that is since 2001, you built your stuff up. How did you get onto TV? Because 2001, yes, TV was popular, but not with all the podcasts and TV shows and TikTok and social media that there was today. How did you get your name out and start off?
Yeah, I mean, it took a while. Like, I graduated in 2004 and I got to ESPN in 2018. So that took 14 years. But luckily, I lived in a day and age where there was the internet, and I was able to start my own website in 2007. And I really used YouTube and podcasts and stuff to get my name out there. So I've kind of been a little bit non-traditional in that sense. I've been able to build myself up on digital platforms as opposed to just linear platforms. I've of course done some stuff on TV as well, but no, this is a great time to be a journalist, to be a content creator, because there's way more opportunities and outlets than back in the day. Back in the day, there were like 3 TV channels and a couple of newspapers and a couple of radio stations. Now we have so many different ways to get our name out. So it's a huge difference, and I think it's a huge thing for all of us. It's a major bonus.
Right. And then as social media grows, social media gets bigger, more people start going on TikTok and Instagram, and all it takes is one video to get your name out there. How do you adjust your content to stay out there?
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep evolving. You have to keep looking at what other people are doing. You have to keep looking at what people are responding to and what they're interested in. And I think that's very important as well. If your stuff isn't resonating with people, that's very important. And you just have to keep, you have to keep going at it. You have to be consistent. You have to keep challenging yourself to be as best as you can be. These are all very important things. And now I've been doing this professionally. I started in '01 as a college student, and then I really started to do it professionally since '07. And that's 17 years. That's a long time. I'm getting very old and I can't believe it, but I just, you just have to keep working hard, and you'll have good days, you'll have bad days, you'll have roadblocks here and there, but I think just being consistent and keep striving to improve and to evolve will keep people interested in your content continuously.
Right. And obviously, to keep people engaged, you can't just repeat the same stuff that the live broadcast said when they were um telling the fight and broadcasting the fight. You can't just repeat what the sideline guy said in the box and was like, how do you think you got the win? What were some key points in the fight for you? You can't repeat that when people come on your show or when you're doing analysis of the fight. How do you dig deeper and get information out of the fighter that some other outlets might not have gotten?
I try to keep it fresh. I try to look at what they've talked about before, what they're doing in interviews, what's being presented to them, and sometimes it's a matter of like not even asking about the fight, looking at their social media, looking at what they're doing with their family, look at what is of interest to them, look at what they're into, and I try to make the interviews very conversational. So like we were going to get a coffee or food, get lunch. I don't come with a sheet of questions. I try to reach people on a personal level. I'm also aware that I'm not a fighter or a coach, so I don't try to get into technicalities. I don't try to get into that type of analysis where I'm, breaking things down and doing things like, okay, so talk to me about this and that. Like I want to connect more on a human level, and I think people connect to that as well. So that's generally been my approach.
Right. And then with that, being on a human level, everybody's human. Just because you're a fighter, you're fighting, doesn't mean you're necessarily above someone or whatever. And at the end of the day, being a pro athlete, Perlman talks about this all the time. Yes, you could play in the MLB, NHL, NFL for 3 years and then be known for that. But most of the time, yes, it's cool to talk about. But pro athletes don't want to just talk about their whole personality to be that. I'm a UFC fighter. I need to talk about UFC 24/7. I need to talk about that. How do you bring day-to-day conversations, but still keep it in a wrestling content?
Well, at the end of the day, these people are athletes and they do this for a living, but they're normal human beings like you and I, and they have interests outside of the sport, and they have families, and they have all kinds of interesting things, interesting backstories, upbringings, family stuff. And so everyone is dealing with this type of thing for better or worse. And so I try, I think that my general philosophy is, if you are emotionally invested in a person, in their journey, in their story, in their background, in who they are and what they stand for and believe in, you'll want to watch them compete. You'll want to watch them on TV or pay to watch them, pay-per-view tickets, etc. And so I try to get you emotionally invested in who they are as people so that you feel something when they compete.
Right. And then if you say that you did an interview with someone right before the week of their fight and you talk about their upbringing and that they aren't just a fighter, but they maybe do something, a side hustle. Maybe they're a big fisher, but then, and you see people on your show who are fishing. Oh, this guy's a big fisher. I'm going to root for him and buy his next ticket. That means that they get more fans and stuff like that. You could also bring publicity to the person that you're interviewing and then recruit more people for your show.
100%. Yeah, I mean, and then they become characters, and then people want to hear from them again, and it just makes for better content and a better conversation. So that applies to anyone in any walk of life. The more interesting you are, the more people are going to gravitate towards you.
Right. And then some of that stuff gravitating towards people. How do you not necessarily throw anybody under the bus while you're interviewing them? Yes, everybody makes mistakes. We're all human. But how do you not necessarily throw someone under the bus after they lose a fight or they've had a tough stretch of fights while you're interviewing them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think that it's necessarily a matter of throwing them under the bus. It's you just try to be respectful. You try to be professional. If someone's coming off a loss, you don't say like, "Man, what was it like getting knocked out?" You just try to speak with empathy and care and understanding, and hopefully that's appreciated. Sometimes there are going to be hard questions that are going to be asked. Sometimes that's going to happen, but I think it's very important to speak to someone like a human being, and remember they're not just some athlete that you see on TV that doesn't have any feelings or emotions. This is very tough. It's especially tough to be a fighter in the public eye, and you get knocked out and you have to go online and people are mocking you. So I try to be very cognizant of that, and also be cognizant of the fact that if I am disrespectful, then they're never going to talk to me again. So I will suffer the consequences if I want to be someone who has access and speak to these people. So I try to be very cognizant of that.
Right. And then with that, being cognizant of people, obviously media, it's a big competition with inside of the competition that everybody's covering. People want to get that top spot. We want to be that go-to fighter reporter person. How do you not necessarily throw other reporters not necessarily throw them under the bus, but make bad emphasis of what they've said and necessarily because it's a competitive business. How do you bring original not original work, but not undertake anybody else's opinions?
Yeah, I've always been someone who doesn't really like, especially when it comes to MMA, I try not to listen to anyone else because I'm afraid that if I listen to them, like their opinions will seep into my head. So I really don't consume. I'll consume interviews with fighters. Like if I know that fighter X is coming on my show and I want to be prepared for them, I'll consume an interview of theirs, but I don't consume like opinion stuff because I think it's just sort of like human nature. You'll stumble upon these things and it will kind of seep in to your body and mind and thoughts, and I don't want that to happen. So I just personally try to ignore it so that I don't fall into that trap.
Going on that path still, how do you prepare for someone? Yes, you said watching a fight that they had or an interview that they had after a fight, an interview that they've done on TV. How do you prepare for a new guest that you've not necessarily talked to before?
Yeah, so I'll consume a lot of their interviews. I'll read a lot about them. I'll see, what's going on in their social media, on their Instagram, on their Twitter, etc. I'll go on Google News and see what's been in the news lately as it pertains to them. And I'll try to do as much research as possible. If it's someone that I've talked to a million times, I don't have to delve so far deep into their background. But if it's someone that I haven't talked to before, I like to be as prepared as possible, and by being prepared, you have a confidence that you can steer the conversation in many different directions. And if they take you in different directions, you'll be prepared to take it there as well.
Right. And then obviously there's hundreds of athletes and personnel in fighting. How do you build connections with the fighters that you've interviewed and them to say, hey, to their buddy, hey, I just got an invite to go on this guy on Ariel's show. I saw you on there. Do you think I should do it? Was it a good interview?
Yeah, I mean, I try to be very, very, very respectful, very professional, very grateful. I thank them. I try not to take too much of their time. I try not to hit them with disrespectful questions that they feel uncomfortable discussing. And because if I get you today, I want to get you the next time and the next time and the next time. And so I want you to leave the interview saying like, all right, yeah, cool. I'll do that. That was fun. That wasn't a waste of my time, or that wasn't a frustrating experience. So these are, things that from the beginning, like when I first used to reach out to people, I would only keep them on for like 15, 20 minutes because I wanted them to come on the next time. And I don't want to be like, oh man, this guy's going to keep me on for an hour. I don't want that. So, most importantly, be respectful, be gracious, be grateful, be professional, be thankful, and also be understanding of their time as well, so that you could get them for the second, third, fourth, fifth time.
Right. And then obviously, not everybody's going to have a perfect interview every time. You're going to stumble a little bit. Maybe you asked the wrong question that wasn't necessarily appropriate. Maybe it's just a sensitive topic for the person you're interviewing and you didn't necessarily know that and they give you a minimal response. How do you get the information that you want out of someone?
First of all, I'm very hard on myself, so I often feel like it wasn't a good interview, that I stumbled, that I misspoke, that I didn't ask this question correctly, etc. And like anything, I think it's just a reps thing. So it's like, the best quarterbacks out there, what are they doing? They're throwing 1,000 balls a day. The best 3-point shooters out there, they're shooting 10,000 3 points, 3-point shots in a week or something like that. So to me, it's like the more you do something, the more you go at it, the more you think about it, the more you try to tweak and try to be as good at it as possible, the better you'll be. So I still don't feel like I'm there. I still feel like I need to get better. I still feel like I'm not even close to where I can be, and I just keep trying to zero in and keep trying to be better.
Right. And then obviously, you have to learn from your mistakes. How do you watch film almost? Because the best NFL players, best MLB players, they all watch film and they're like, I should have known that that pitch was coming. I should have known that they were bringing an extra blitz this time. How do you watch film and build off and make better in aspects that you probably weren't the best in?
I honestly don't watch or listen to a ton. I'll watch or listen to a few minutes, but I kind of know in the moment. Like I'll know the moment an interview is done, what was good and what wasn't, what I said or didn't say or should have said or said too much of. I will know these things. So I don't necessarily feel like I have to watch. If I have to, I'll just go back and do it. But personally, I actually tend to avoid it.
Right. And then social media, you need little clips out of the 30-minute interview that you do. You need 30-second, 45 second. So people will get hooked on you. How do you find those clips? Do you find those clips and stuff like that?
Well, when I was younger, I used to do all of that, but luckily now there are people who I work with that do it for me, and I just kind of leave it to them. One thing that I'm working on is trying to be less sort of involved in every single thing, because that can drive you crazy. So you have to trust other people and not be a micromanager. So these days, unless there's something truly, truly, truly specific that I feel very strongly about, I just kind of leave it up to them.
Right. And then obviously social media being a harmful spot these days. Yes, there's positives out of it, but most of it's negative these days. How do you try and stay on the positive and bring a smile to every person that you interact with?
Yeah, that's a great question because it can be quite toxic. It can be quite negative. I just try to I try to remember that what I do is an escape for people. And so if I'm feeling a certain way, I shouldn't make myself negative. I shouldn't exude negativity. I shouldn't try to bring people down. And so, if people say I'm being too negative, I take that criticism to heart and I try to give people what they want. And remember that what I do is for most people a hobby and escape and something that they look forward to, as opposed to my soapbox to be all negative. So I try my best. I'm not always successful in doing so, but I try to remind myself that what I do is someone's break from reality, and it's very important to be as positive as possible.
Right. I mean, you do get to do it for a living, what some people dream to do, what they listen to for fun in their free time, and you do it for a living. So, I mean, why be negative when you're bringing people positivity? Another thing
Yeah.
with that is obviously with social media nowadays, you get direct feedback. Like your show, all the comments on YouTube, comments on Instagram, Twitter, you get direct feedback. Do you look at that and use it to make yourself better?
So I'd be lying if I said I completely ignore it. I try really hard not to read it because it can get in your head. Try not to get too high with the highs, too low with the lows. It's right there. So I think, I commend anyone who doesn't look at it. But we're all, I think we're all kind of guilty of that. I just try not to let it affect me too much and get in my head. But yeah, you're right. Like in the 50s and 60s when people were broadcasters, when they were working in news, when they were writing papers, like they didn't get that direct feedback, and so it didn't mess with you. Now you pick up your phone and it's like right there in your face at any point, which is not the healthiest thing, but I've just kind of learned over the years to try to have thicker skin.
Right. And then obviously you started in 2001 on reporting combat sports. How do you think the growth has really happened? And what is it like experiencing the growth from when you first started to what it is now?
Yeah, it's in a completely different spot. Like back then, it was hardly legal in any state. It was very hard to get any coverage of it. It was just nowhere near as popular. And I think a huge thing was in 2018 when the UFC signed with ESPN. That was huge because it took it to a different level as far as notoriety is concerned. I think the pandemic helped them a lot because they came back sooner than all the other major sports. So it's like May of 2020 now, and they're back and other sports aren't. And so they had 2 months where they were kind of like the only game in town. I think the online gambling has helped them a lot. DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, that's helped them out a ton. Um, and the superstars like Conor McGregor and others getting so popular has really helped their notoriety as well. So all those things combined, it's important to also remember that the UFC is only 31 years old. They're about to turn 31. That's a baby compared to the NFL, the NBA, the
Over
NHL,
a
Major
hundred
League.
years old.
Yeah, so it's not even. I mean, they're still in their infancy. So they've come a long way in a short amount of time, and they've really done a great job of building the sport and obviously building their brand and connecting with people. And now to the point where, I know some teenagers or some young 20-year-olds who like it more than the more traditional sports, and that was never a thing.
Right. And sports, this isn't a sport that parents are like, yeah, go wrestle and go punch people in the face, go fight people. Like that takes a little bit of convincing to gain publicity and growth because 31 years ago, there's not a lot of research. People are not saying, yeah, you can go fight, do whatever. They're like, do you really want to go fight? But like now with all this advanced stuff and it being bigger and bigger, people enjoy it and want to go do it, which has definitely probably helped the sport grow. But then, as you said, Conor McGregor and having big names, how do you think that having personalities like that has upped the bringing of MMA and UFC?
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you get like superstars like Mike Tyson was the case in boxing in the 80s and Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, like if you get a superstar, it changes everything. And Connor was that back in the day. There was Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz and many others, John Jones, Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre. So you need the superstar. You need the person that people gravitate towards. And in 2015, 16, 17, it was Connor. And he's still a superstar. He's just not fighting as much these days. But yes, it's very, you can't just have them be just kind of like faceless characters that no one has any connection to. There has to be something that people gravitate towards because you're asking them to pay pay-per-view tickets, etc., merchandise. So it's without superstars, there's nothing. There's no organization.
Right, and you see every week UFC, MMA, they all have these celebrities in the crowd, which also drawing those people in could definitely help. Oh, my favorite quarterback, he goes to these events. Why don't I pay to watch it on TV? Which has also helped because it's not necessarily like basketball or football. Football, it's on CBS, Fox. Like you could get it on cable. Wrestling's a lot hard, or MMA, UFC is a lot harder to get people to watch. But they've done a great job with branding it and making a name for itself. But that also is to you and in TV with personalities. How do you think you bring yourself as a personality to others?
Yeah, I mean, originally when I was doing my job, I was just kind of asking questions and was trying to be as sort of I don't want to say vanilla, but like, and I don't want to say controversial, but just kind of like down the middle. But over time, you realize people are watching you a lot and they want your personality. And it was really when I went to ESPN where they told me I needed to show more of my personality, and that comes with experience and confidence and being comfortable in your skin. And I used to watch a show and listen to a show called The Howard Stern Show, and Howard was very into showing his personality and talking about his life and his family and all that stuff. And so I have felt as I have gotten more comfortable in my skin on camera, in front of the camera, that I feel like it's a lot more natural for me to do that. And also that comes with like caring less about what people say or think. There's always going to be a vocal minority, but if you stick to what you believe in and also aren't playing a character and just staying true to yourself, it's pretty easy and more fun when you can be yourself on camera.
Right, because you're being yourself. Why wouldn't you want to keep doing it? It's more fun for you too if you don't have to put on a mask and a fake character whenever you're on television talking about what you love. And then also, you said when you got hired to ESPN, now you've moved on from that and learned under many personalities from ESPN. Bill Simmons, just to name a few that you've learned under. How do you think they've helped you elevate your game from these high profile media personnel? But how do you also think you've helped younger generations and people below you elevate their game?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I've never really asked them for help, but just observing them and watching them and listening to them. Like I said, I'm still learning. I'm still admiring. I'm still consuming a lot, and just by doing that, I think it makes me get better. And you know, I don't know how I've helped. My path was a little bit non-traditional, and perhaps that has inspired others. And obviously, with the sport getting more popular, that helps get more people to consume your content. But it's hard for me to say how I've helped the younger generation. I don't know if it's true. If there are people who look up to me or who try to follow my path or anything like that, that's an incredible honor, not something that I take for granted. But I feel like that's a question that would be easier for them to answer than me.
Right. All right. To end it off here, we have the final 14 questions in a rapid fire pace.
Okay,
All right. Who is your idol?
my mom and dad,
Favorite fast food place?
Domino's,
Biggest fear?
dying,
Favorite school subject?
English,
Favorite hobby?
Playing basketball.
Favorite gym workout.
Boxing.
Favorite influencer.
I'll say Kai Cenat because my kids like Kai Cenat.
Favorite animal.
The toucan.
Favorite TV show.
Seinfeld.
Biggest pet peeve.
People who don't wash their hands when they go to the bathroom.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Favorite emoji.
The smiley one with the like sweat, the nervous guy.
And then last but not least, are you a shower singer?
Not really. I'm a thinker in the shower. I feel like my thoughts get
Deep
crystallized.
thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like my thoughts get crystallized in the shower. So I don't really like sing, but I think a lot about things, and I think I get a lot of stuff done in the shower.